At Christmas dinner, I knocked on the door with a bottle of wine in one hand and homemade dessert in the other. The porch smelled like cinnamon and cedar. Laughter spilled through the walls like warmth. And then the door swung open. It was my sister. Hair curled. Dress perfect. Eyes already sharp. She looked me up and down, then leaned against the doorframe. "We don't want you here," she said. "Go ruin someone else's holiday." Behind her, I saw the dining table. Candles flickering. Ham glistening. My mother pouring wine. My brother throwing his head back in laughter. No one looked at the door. No one noticed I hadn't come in. I stood there for a second, just long enough for my heart to break, without shattering. Then I nodded, stepped back onto the icy steps, and said, "Got it." I turned and walked away, the cold biting into my skin harder than her words did. My name is Samantha, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because have you ever realized, all in one moment, that your family never saw you as one of them? That your seat at the table was always conditional? That love, in their house, came with a side of silence? I got in my car, sat in the driveway for a moment, hands on the wheel, and then I drove away. 10 minutes later, I was halfway down Main Street when I heard it, my phone buzzing like it was on fire. Dad. Again. Dad. I picked up, and all I heard was him, yelling my name into the wind, like someone had just woken him from a lie. "Samantha, where are you? You need to come back, now." I pulled over, rolled down the window, let the cold slap my face and whispered, "Why?" You all looked happy without me. What he said next changed everything. And by the time I turned the car around, I wasn't coming back as the forgotten daughter. I was coming back as the truth. The panic in his voice wasn't subtle. Not irritation. Not guilt. Panic. "Your sister told us you weren't coming," my dad said breathlessly. "She said you were spending Christmas with friends. That you'd decline the invite." "I texted Mom 3 days ago," I said, my voice flat. "I never saw it," he replied. "We thought you were just avoiding us again." Avoiding? I pulled up to the side of the road and stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed me. "She told you I wasn't coming, then slammed the door in my face when I did?" I asked. "She what?" he said, his voice rising. "She did what?" And that's when I realized. This wasn't just cruelty. It was strategy. My sister had rewritten the narrative before I even arrived. She planned the exile in advance, got them all warm, cozy, full, and ignorant before delivering the lie that I had ghosted them. Because what's more believable than the family screw-up not showing up? "Samantha," my dad said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I exhaled, slow and steady. "I know, Dad. But she did." I turned the car around. And this time, I wasn't driving back with cranberry pie and good intentions. I was driving back with receipts. Because while they ate and laughed and toasted without me, they didn't know I'd kept everything. The texts, the screenshots, the voicemails, even the audio from outside the door when she slammed it in my face and muttered, "That should do it." She'd played the long game. But I'd been quietly building the archive. When I walked back in, my dad met me at the door. Arms wide, eyes wide, face red. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered, hugging me like he'd just found something he never meant to lose. But over his shoulder, I saw her, my sister, standing frozen at the end of the hall. Champagne flute still in hand, smile cracking, color draining, because I wasn't supposed to come back. And I sure as hell wasn't supposed to come back with the truth. The room went still. Forks paused midair. My mother's eyes darted from me to my sister, like she was watching two versions of a memory collide. "Samantha," she said carefully, "we didn't think you were coming." "She told you that," I said calmly, peeling off my coat. "I never said it." My sister finally stepped forward, but her voice was too light, too late. "I just didn't want everyone getting their hopes up. You've missed a lot lately." "I've missed a lot," I repeated. "Or you've explained away a lot?" Dad turned, eyes narrowing. "Did you read her text or not?" My sister blinked. I might have forgotten." "Forgotten?" I said. Like how you forgot to tell them I left a voicemail. Like how you forgot to open the gift I sent last year, but managed to post it on your Instagram anyway with your name on the tag.
Gasps.
My cousin put down her glass. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. I have the receipts, I said, pulling out my phone and tapping into the folder labeled Holiday Gaslight Chronicles. Yes, I had named it. I didn't want this. I really didn't. I continued. But I'm tired of being the villain in your stories. I hit play. And there it was. The voice memo. My sister, at the door just hours ago. We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday. Then, her voice again, muttering as she turned away. That should do it. The room collapsed into silence. My aunt covered her mouth. My brother stood slowly, like gravity had shifted. Even the kids stopped chewing. My sister took a step back. Okay, she said, her voice shaking. Maybe that wasn't fair. But you've always made things about you. I haven't made anything. I cut in. I've just stopped letting you erase me. Dad turned to her, his face thunder. Out, he said. She blinked. What? You heard me, he said. Get out, Dad.
Now.
She looked around the room, expecting someone, anyone, to defend her. No one moved. And for the first time in my life, my sister looked truly, completely alone. She left. No shoes. No jacket. No last word. And the second the door shut behind her, my mom said softly, "Why didn't we see it before?" I looked around the table. I think deep down you did.
But now?
They couldn't unsee it. Dinner resumed, but it wasn't the same. The laughter came slower now. The wine glasses clinked quieter. And for once, the tension in the room didn't come from me being there. It came from the fact that they'd finally seen what I'd carried for years. After dessert, my father pulled me aside into the hallway, away from the whispers, away from the questions. He looked shaken, embarrassed, like a man standing in the wreckage of a home he thought was built on love and just realized was built on loyalty to the wrong daughter. I failed you, he said. I swallowed hard. You believed her. I wanted to believe both of you, he admitted. But she always took up more space. You were quieter. No, I corrected him. I was tired. He nodded slowly, tears glossing his eyes. I should have asked why, he said. I didn't reply. What do you say when a lifetime of gaslighting is finally acknowledged? Instead, I let him sit in the truth. He hugged me tight.
Real.
Not performative. Stay tonight, he said. Please. Let's start fixing this. I nodded. But I knew this wasn't about starting. This was about stopping what never should have been allowed. That night, as I changed into borrowed pajamas and curled up in my childhood bedroom, I scrolled through the new group chat Dad had created. Family rebuild, no lies. One by one, relatives joined. No sister. No fake apologies. Just honest faces. Quiet messages. My brother wrote, "We owe you more than a text." My cousin added, "She always dimmed you. Never again." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own bloodline. Downstairs, I heard Dad cleaning up the plates she left behind. And I smiled. Because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration. And my absence wasn't the threat. It was the wake-up call. The next morning, I found my sister's gift still under the tree. Wrapped in silver foil, ribbon tied perfectly, presentation over sincerity, as always. I picked it up and saw the tag. To Dad from both of us. Both of us. She'd tried to erase me even in her giving. I set it on the counter and made coffee. By noon, she'd started posting. Not an apology. Not even a denial. Just vague, sulky captions with snowflake emojis and phrases like, "Sometimes your absence is your power," and "letting go of toxicity this season." She was trying to reclaim the narrative again, flipping herself into the victim before anyone else could accuse her of being the villain. It might have worked before, but not this time. Not when the whole family had already seen the footage, heard her words, watched the truth knock the wind out of her lies. Dad refused to engage online. Instead, he called every family member personally that day to tell them the truth. to say he was sorry, to say he finally saw it. And every single one of them said the same thing. We always had a feeling. We just didn't want to believe it. I spent that day quietly helping Mom put away the Christmas dishes. She didn't say much until she handed me a photo, one I hadn't seen in years. It was me at 12, holding a school award, face flushed with pride. Behind me, barely visible, was my sister, pretending to cry into her sleeve. Even then, "She's been doing this since you were a kid," Mom said softly. I nodded, and then I asked, "Why didn't you stop her?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then, because we mistook drama for pain, and silence for strength. I blinked. That one sentence cracked something in me. Because they hadn't just failed me, they'd admired my ability to endure. But endurance isn't love, and silence isn't peace. That night, I lit a candle and wrote a letter to my younger self. It started with, "You were never hard to love. They just didn't know how to hold you without guilt." And I ended it with, "Next year, you set the guest list. Because family isn't just who invites you in. It's who honors you when you show up." A few days after Christmas, the group thread exploded. Not with drama, but with silence. No one had heard from my sister. No guilt-lay selfies. No manipulative New Year, New Me posts. Just nothing. Until my brother sent a message. "She's at Aunt May's." Showed up crying. Said she's being erased from the family. The irony nearly knocked the wind out of me. Erased? That was my seat she'd stolen.
My voice she drowned.
My presence she edited out of holidays like a bad photograph. And now, when truth finally sat at the table, she screamed exile? But I didn't respond to the thread. I was done explaining who I was. Instead, I kept moving forward. I started planning a dinner at my place, a quiet New Year's gathering with people who had shown up for me when it counted. No one asked if she was invited. No one tiptoed around the question. The absence spoke for itself. On New Year's Eve, my house glowed with gold lights and calm laughter.
Dad brought wine.
Mom brought her favorite pie, the one she never made when my sister was around because she didn't like the smell. And I brought peace. Real peace. Not the kind that comes from keeping everyone comfortable. The kind that comes from choosing who gets access to you. Later that night, Dad stood up for a toast. "I've spent a long time defending what I didn't understand," he said, looking at me. "But this year, I'm starting over. And I want to thank the one person in this room who taught me how." He raised his glass toward me. "To Samantha. For setting the boundary we were too afraid to admit we needed." The room clinked glasses. I smiled, but inside I was shaking. Because that's what healing does. It doesn't roar. It trembles. Quietly. Boldly. It rewrites you one honest moment at a time. I never told my sister she couldn't come. But she didn't ask. And I didn't reach out. Because sometimes the deepest healing is not revenge or forgiveness. It's finally being okay with their silence. January came and went in quiet waves. No dramatic confrontations. No cryptic voicemails. Just absence. And for the first time in years, her silence wasn't a threat. It was relief. I found myself breathing easier, laughing louder, sleeping deeper. And then an email. No subject line. No signature. Just her name in the sender line. I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity has sharp teeth. I opened it. "I know you think you won. But you don't know what it's like to feel invisible. You've always been the favorite. You just didn't notice because you were too busy pretending to be the victim. Someday, when they turn on you, don't come running to me." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just one last grasp at rewriting history. I stared at it. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I clicked reply. "I used to want your love. Then I wanted your apology.
Now?
I don't need either. I don't need to win. I just needed to stop losing myself every time you needed to feel big. You can stay gone. I'll stay whole." I hit send, then blocked her. Not out of anger. Out of finality. Because healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like a clean inbox and a lighter chest. Later that week, I mailed out invites for a spring dinner I was hosting.
Small.
Meaningful. I wrote each name by hand. And this time, I didn't pause when I skipped hers. Because my table wasn't missing a chair. It had finally made room for me. I placed the last envelope in the mailbox and stood under the quiet sky. No grief. No guilt. Just this soft, solid truth. She left a hole, but I grew around it. Like roots. Like something finally grounded. Spring arrived like forgiveness, slowly, then all at once. The air was warmer. The silence stayed peaceful. And I was no longer bracing for impact every time the phone buzzed. The dinner came and went. 12 people at my table.
12 people who saw me.
Heard me. Held space without shrinking mine. After dessert, my dad stood again, this time more certain, more steady. He raised a glass. To the daughter who taught us that silence isn't strength, he said. To the woman who made a place for herself when none was offered.
There were no tears this time.
Only quiet, radiant pride. And as I looked around that table, faces glowing under string lights, laughter bouncing off the patio walls, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Home. Not a place. Not a family name. But a feeling built from boundaries, self-respect, and finally, truth. My mother hugged me before she left. A real hug. One that didn't ask for anything back. And she whispered, "I'm proud of who you've become. I'm sorry we didn't make it easier for you to get here." I nodded, no longer needing more than that. I'd made it. By June, I heard my sister had moved. New city. New cycle. Still trying to spin stories without anyone left to cast in them.
But I didn't follow.
Didn't check her socials. Didn't care who she pretended to be next. Because I was busy living. Not proving. Not performing. Living. And on the first day of summer, I sat on my porch with coffee in one hand and sunlight on my skin, and I whispered the words I'd waited a lifetime to say. She can't hurt me anymore. And, even better, she can't rewrite me anymore. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the forgotten. I wasn't the afterthought at the holiday table. I was the woman who stood at the door, heard hate, and chose truth anyway. I was the woman who turned a slammed door into an open life. I was the woman who came home to herself.